Jason, we are live. We're live streaming on X. How do you like that, huh?
Perfect. TGIF.
We have reached stardom. That's what I like to say. Anyway, hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are on this beautiful marble ball of ours. I'm Matt Kimball, and I am joined by, what's your name?
Jason Andersen.
That's right, Jason Andersen. We represent More Insights and Strategy, and we are talking all things IT on the IT Talk podcast. We hit IT topics in a quick hit fashion, kind of chat a little bit about what we see going on out there and kind of interesting events that unfurl. And we present this all to you, Mr., Mrs. Viewer or listener, as information and entertainment. Do not take anything we say as professional advice for investing. It's a silly disclaimer we have to do, but we do have to do. And if I could say this in a really fast legalese kind of way, I would, but I can't. Nothing we're to say and give to you today in terms of our opinions is to be taken as financial advice. Why you would do that in the first place is beyond me. So, hey, we got a lot to talk about today, Jason. We got a couple of fun topics, and I want to hit on the Red Sox a little bit more.
Okay.
At the end, as spring training is in full-blown go mode. But you want to talk about some interesting stuff. Well, before we do that, real quickly, how's your week been? All right?
Good.
Yeah?
Solid week.
All right. You said it's leading up in the lovely town of Newburyport. Is that correct?
We had the famous March teaser day, which was, that one day where it's picture perfect spring, and then they throw you right back into the depths of snow just to get your hopes up and smash them on the rocks. But hopefully warmer times are coming.
What ring of hell is that, by the way?
It's the fourth ring of hell.
Well, it's equally horrible down here. I think it's like 72 or something like that. But there's no sunshine today.
I could just choke you. I'll fly down there to choke you. 72 degrees.
Anyway, it'll be 80 tomorrow. Anyway, hey, couple of things we want to talk about today. We're going to start with you.
Yep. Okay.
An interesting kind of topic to hit on.
Yeah.
Edge AI about to go mainstream, but your angle on this is interesting. What are you saying here?
I think we're starting to see signs. We're getting close. I think there's really kind of a couple different angles, and actually, I just discovered a third angle that I want to talk about this morning.
Oh.
So there was a lot of news this week, in particular about Apple releasing the Mac Neo, and it has they made some significant changes to the silicon, and people started to figure out that you can run some pretty big AI models on them, right? And do some pretty interesting things with localized AI. And this isn't necessarily news. I mean, you could have done that with an M4 Power Mac. You could do that with AI computers with Snapdragon in them. So you're finally starting to see hardware evolve to the point where even laptops are able to do some fairly significant work. But on the flip, so that's not super new news other than the flashy new Mac thing. But then the other thing that's come about in the last month or two has been this OpenClaw thing, where you can have an agent. And originally it was really built around, hey, we're going to let you run this agent on your machine, and it's going to be able to use everything on your machine as context to drive these AI things. And there's people doing some pretty powerful automations with it already, but it was defaulting to cloud-based AI. So people were deploying this stuff, and since it's basically an autonomous bot running on your computer, the cloud costs started to come in. But people quickly found that even though it might default to Claude or default to OpenAI, you could actually run a local model on it with some additional configuration. So now you have this very powerful, local computer. You have an agentic framework and local models. So now all of a sudden you have with a little bit of work and a little bit of configuration, if you're pretty technical, you can start doing this stuff now at home without needing a cloud at all, right? So that's pretty powerful stuff. And the third thing that's coming to the front is that one of the neo clouds, Vulture, was really big on empowering people to try AI out. And they are starting to, they, like a lot of the other cloud providers, are starting to kind of set a new floor for GPU, right?
Yep.
So like it used to be, you could get in and buy a GPU instance from, say, Amazon or Azure or Vulture, you know, 1 or 2 vCPUs, right? A pretty small setup. Yep. Now it's like, you know, some of these instances start out, you know, 16, 90, 300, you know, depending on the size of your GPU. So you're starting to see kind of the cloud even kind of walk away from this kind of lower end AI business, right? So all these three things are coming together such that you could see a very easily consumable, very easy to use local AI agent, basically to represent you. Now, at the edge could mean at your home, right? Or the edge could mean other verticals, which is where I think this really gets interesting from an IT talk perspective, right? Is, okay, so you've got this kind of consumer technology that's brewing over here. You've got some changes in the cloud marketplace. Okay, if you're a manufacturer and you don't want to connect your factory to the cloud, which a lot of them don't, or if you're in healthcare and you have regulatory concerns, or if you're just, you know, somebody who's very sensitive about their data, like maybe a hedge fund, these guys are going to be looking at this like, wow, wait a second, I can give my team of analysts a very low end edge offering that's going to allow me to do predictions, or it's going to allow me to do, you know, visual HIPAA stuff, right, in my doctor's office. So I do think we're within maybe months to seeing some sort of easily consumable, easily bought local AI product. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if it does come from one of the cloud guys, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of stripped down version of what they already have, because, you know, they've spent a lot of money on this infrastructure. They want to keep you somehow as a customer, even if you're doing, you know, some local AI. They still want you for that back end stuff and maybe for some training and fine tuning. So I think it's super cool. It's like I said, we've been talking about, you know, you and I have been talking about Edge for 5 years since we first met. And I got to tell you, you know, this is the closest thing I've seen to it being just something more than slideware, right? So it's pretty exciting stuff.
I think this is interesting because I think, to me, this is the first time, remove AI from the equation for a second, and this is the first time I've seen Apple release a product, remove the iPhone too, that could be easily deployed and used with value and affordable in the enterprise, right? So $599 price point, right? 16 core neural engine built in there. That's faster than what you see out of Intel, their Core 5. And it's a, man, that's interesting because they've never had that price point, that kind of entry level to kind of business user or business deployment kind of price point that makes it affordable to deploy at scale or to make available at scale for users. One question I do have for you on this is, because you said something in there interesting about kind of like for tinkerers or power users, is the tooling or the consumption from a user perspective, is it there so that, you know, a nurse that's walking around the floor can easily use it and not have to be a power user of any sorts, or does the kind of the experience have to catch up a little bit before it becomes that way?
You know, it feels to me like the experience has to catch up, especially in these corporate scenarios, because one of the things like OpenClaw will advertise is like, well, you could easily create a chatbot using like, you know, Telegram or Signal, like these common apps that are on your phone or on your desktop, and just connect the chat capability, whatever chat you're using, and connect that to OpenClaw as the agent in the kind of middle tier, let's call it, right? Yeah. And the problem with that is that those types of messaging apps are absolutely terrifying to companies, right? They don't want that out there. And obviously some of those are encrypted, which is a whole different kettle of fish from a privacy standpoint. So I think you're kind of at the point where you've got some really smart people in the open source community who are doing what they always do, which is, hey, look, this is a piece in an API I can take, and I can take these and slam them together and make it work. what you now need is that kind of somebody to come in and go, okay, I'm going to take this idea, maybe even take some of that code from the open source world and build out like an end-to-end solution that I will provide support around, I will provide indemnification on, whatever that might be legally. Because right now it's still kind of, if you're really bleeding edge and you really want to do it, you probably, you can. Yeah. But I think for most companies, your point about a nurse or an operational technologist, they're going to want something that's going to be like, a browser page, or it's going to be an app. Like they want something that's like frankly, like a Claude or an OpenAI experience, or a Gemini experience for that matter.
Yeah, it's so interesting that it's interesting to see all the pieces starting to come together. And you're right. We've been talking about edge and how it's the next big thing for the last 5 years. Here's your kind of like, here's the enablement of that, right?
Right.
And I like how you're pointing out kind of, I think a lot of folks, when they hear edge, they think kiosks, or they think, the industrial edge, and they forget that these, roving nursing stations and things of that nature, they are far more common, and there's a lot more of them from an edge perspective than the other, right?
The other thing that jumps out at me about it is just this whole thing about personal agency, right? Where if you think about some of the agent capabilities that are also coming in line kind of in situ with this, right, is things like memory, things like some of the desktop control stuff like you're seeing with Perplexity Computer, Cowork, those types of tools. You're going to see this thing essentially become almost an augmentation of it, or a digital version of you, right? So you can then go into a scenario where when we get better agentic orchestration, the touch point is actually going to be your agent, not you typing into a context window, right? It'll plug right into that type of, so when and then if you think about it, it can run 24/7. So that's another, so when you get into the kind of where agents can go discussion of this, right? Because now you have this kind of idea of connecting these remote islands to what was once just a cloud playground, right? That really starts to open things up. But then when you think about where the agentic ideas can go beyond that over, say, the next 12, 24 months plus, you may not even really be talking to Claude anymore. You might be just talking to your own personal agent in your own personal way. And that'll go integrate with Claude or with, Chase Bank's mortgage agent, or, all of a sudden everything goes agent to agent. And that could really be exciting stuff, right? I mean, it's one thing to be able to have the same experience, but do it on your desktop and save a few bucks. But the next step will be, of course, a completely new experience, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw some article, I forget who it was, somebody in the industry though. It was so fascinating, talking about kind of, the future of models, the foundation models in particular, and how they're all scraping the same data out there. And it's kind of like there's a convergence or a commoditization that is going to naturally occur, and the real differentiation happens kind of at the agent level or some of these specialized models. But it's
there's also so many expertise-driven things out there too. I mean, we just published a thing on SAP, how it's built a model for tabular data.
Yep.
You don't want an LLM. You don't want to do that to write an email. You don't want to use RPT-1 to write an email, right? Which is SAP's invention. But you sure want it to predict when your inventory is going to run out, right?
Yep.
So specialization is also going to really happen once you start to unlock this piece.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's maybe something we talk about on a future is that kind of the future of models, because it is fascinating. And I think people largely, if they're not deeply involved, have this abstract view of models, and it's an OpenAI versus a Mistral versus this versus that, and it's a far different story than that.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Right,
sorry. What do I got? So I'm going to do, mine's going to be more kind of event focused.
Okay.
So go from really interesting to me just kind of blabbing for a few minutes. So, but it does speak to something related to this, and that is I attended Vast Data, their first customer event called Forward last week in Salt Lake City. I want to kind of share some thoughts from it. First is around Salt Lake City. When they told me it was there, I was like, what? Salt Lake City in February? It's a cool place, man. Really
There you
cool
go.
vibe. And it's kind of got, it doesn't have that like New York, Boston, Chicago vibe to it, but it has a very livable vibe to it, without a doubt. Kind of like, and being outdoorsy, I think I'd really appreciate living there. So really cool venue. Part two, Vast is still considered a startup. Now, I did startups in the 90s, and a startup in the 90s was 30 to 50 people with a couple $1 million of
Yeah.
funding, and you hope to get acquired. And it was the one in a million. It was truly the unicorn that would go IPO, but you're really hoping your exit strategy was usually acquisition. Vast has, I think they have like 1,200 employees. They have like they said somewhere between 700 and 1,000, which is a weird range. Funny, but customers, they've broken 3 billion in, or 2 or 3 billion in revenue, and they're generating 100 million in cash every quarter. That to me is not a startup, or I guess it's a different startup world, and I'm happy for them, but that's so different than the startup I used to work at. Third thing on it is, when you think of like the companies that are dealing with data, like the data management companies, old school is you're thinking Oracle, you're thinking Microsoft SQL, maybe if you're a little crazy, Postgres and MySQL, right? And kind of the bigger, stodgier, and the demographic tends to be a little bit more, a little grayer like we are, and maybe a little, man, there's an enthusiasm that Vast had that is like, it's almost cult-like in,
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
And you don't expect it from from that kind of industry.
Yeah.
But it was a great event. So event aside, here's what I kind of found really interesting. Every time I sit down with Vast, I walk away going, these are really smart guys that are solving really complex problems, and I can't fully understand what they do. But I'm going to try and explain it in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or less. First off, stop thinking of Vast as a storage company. Storage is the underpinning of everything they do, but it is really about data management. It's about how you take all of that data that sits everywhere around the world and feed your GPUs as fast as you can for training and for inference. And if you think about this in kind of a logical way, think of 5 layers to the AI stack. We can argue whether it's right or wrong, but just walk with me here. First is physical, right? That's your data center, it's power, cooling facilities. Second is silicon. It's your GPUs, CPUs, ASICs, all of that kind of underlying technology that stands that up. Third is the data platform, and that is having that universal kind of global data system. That's where Vast sits. Fourth is your models. It's your models and your runtimes.
Yep.
You're doing your training, inference agents, and then on top of that are your apps and services.
Yeah.
Vast sits in that space where it takes all of that data and it becomes effectively your AI substrate. So whether it's physical AI, robotics, whether it's agentic AI, regardless of how you're using AI, it is what takes all of that data and makes it usable for AI to happen around your environment. And to me, they have done the best job of simplifying a really complex world in their role in it. Now, so they've abstracted all that complexity. They are in virtually every neo cloud you care about. They're making their way into all of the clouds. They have all of the CSPs. They have a super tight relationship with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is one of their is a significant investor in them. That should tell you something. In this idea of kind of like the all-up AI operating system has been resonating more and more and more. So it's a really interesting play they have here. People are like, well, who do they compete with? I don't think they compete with a Dell or an Everpure necessarily. There's some element where they do. They don't compete with an HPE or a Lenovo. They don't, they kind of sit in this weird space where they kind of compete with everybody, but kind of don't compete with anybody, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, if you take that concept of we're the substrate that connects all that data that's being fed into the GPUs to your applications, to your robots, to your vehicles, to everything else, then they eventually become critical to the AI equation for everybody and anybody and anything.
Yeah.
And that is a really interesting play. So while you might not think about them as a small enterprise or commercial enterprise or an IT company or IT organization, you're eventually, there are chances are that you're eventually going to use, or you're going to be impacted by vast technology in your enterprise AI activation. I'm going to shut up there and let you kind of.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the stack, I think the thing I always think too is there's kind of a twofold thought to it, is that I actually think the data layer is spreading in the sense, I almost even now call it a context layer, because, and really I only call it that because more of a marketing thing. And the reason I say that is because you're right, people think data and they immediately think storage and databases, and it's so much more than that now. And the other thing that, so I think that, and VAST plays a big role in that, but the other part of it that stands out with me with VAST in particular is this whole thing about when you talk about reducing complexity, but the other side of it is that they've done a really nice job of kind of, I'll call it they've reduced complexity, but the truth is they've done that in a way by kind of more of a unified software hardware approach.
Yep.
And when you go look at what's happening with some of the cloud folks where they're doing custom silicon, or what you've seen in networking for the last 6 bazillion years, is in order to get to the level of scale and performance in certain aspects of this, you are going to need that kind of marriage and that kind of optimization, right? So I do think that is kind of us going around the circle of trends again, right? Is we're now starting to head back to, really what we'll call engineered systems, right? Where there is going to be that, and that's where VAST sits. So it's a very interesting take. I mean, I'm a big fan of the data platforms out there, and it'll be really interesting to see how the Snowflakes and the Databricks and even Mongo's Atlas, MongoDB's new Atlas offerings, those types of things, how are they going to fit into like a VAST type of universe? Because I think some of these software companies aren't going to, especially the ones in the data context space, aren't going to be able to get away with saying we're Switzerland, right? They're going to have to I'm not saying they're going to necessarily all go become hardware companies, but they're going to have to make picks and choices in terms of what your word substrate they're going to rely on, and what substrates they're going to rely on. And then who's ultimately going to dictate that? Is it the cloud vendors? Is it the enterprises? It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But there's some pretty cool stuff going on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have, you can also talk about kind of proprietary versus open. Mm-hmm. Your point about engineered system is so well taken. And if you look at how AI is being deployed, even at the most sophisticated kind of, in the most capable and mature kind of organizations, they are integrated engineered systems that are being deployed. And whenever I hear people go, well, I don't want, the market's not going to accept a vertically integrated stack. And I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think the complexities around AI are so big that enterprise in particular is looking for as much abstraction of all that craziness as they possibly can. I don't want to rely on my database administrator, my storage administrator, and my data scientist to get in a room and figure out how to stand up, and others, right? How to stand up an AI stack. I'd rather go push a button and have it done for me.
Just look at what Google's doing, right? I mean, with the GPUs, right? I mean, they're probably one of the better examples in terms of the whole thing. And it's impressive. And I think it has a lot to do also with just pure speed for the vendor. Because if you have, I had a product line a few years ago where we had an operating system and we were like, we can run this thing anywhere. And what we realized was it was for the edge, right? As you know, it was an edge-based system, and we were able to deliver so much faster in the beginning by just saying, you know, we're going to sell it as an appliance. We're not going to sell it as an operating system that can run on Dell, HP, and everything else. And not only could we get it out faster and evolve it faster, but I didn't have to do all the testing, right? So I didn't have to test it out on all these systems. I didn't have to do all this stuff because, to your point, operating systems have a high level of complexity, right? So, yeah, you know, part of the reason that this is starting to happen isn't just the fact that people, because of the complexity, but it's also because the vendors are going, Jesus Christ, if I wanted to support this on everything, I wouldn't, it would take me years, right, to get it out instead of months. And that's a big difference too.
And AI ain't waiting.
It ain't waiting for anybody. That's right.
Nope. Hey, so let's shift gears a second, because more important than Apple, more important than Vast and anybody else is the Boston Red Sox and what's coming up in the following few months. So grapefruit season is underway.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been following, but they're 6-6, the Red Sox. And people are, I see sniping happen online about, you know, kind of a 6-6 record. And it's from stupid people. So I'm going to offend, we have 40,000 viewers right now. I'm just kidding, we don't. But I'm going to offend probably half of our viewers and tell them they're stupid. But here's the thing. Grapefruit League or the Cactus League is meant for all of you viewers. It's meant to test out all of your parts, figure out your lineup, figure out your starting rotation, figure out your platoons and all that stuff. So quit griping about it. They're looking amazing. Peyton Toll, or Tolley, depending on how you want to pronounce his name, hit 100 on a 4-seamer, which is fabulous. He's added a new off speed to his pitch. They're going to have the best rotation in the American League, probably in the MLB, and their prospects are starting to show up as well. Man, they look really, really good. It's going to be a fun season. And if you want to go escape down to South Florida for a weekend, Jason, let me know, because I'd love to go catch some grapefruit games, Grapefruit League.
Yeah. And those games are the best. I mean, I didn't get to go, let's see, 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago, I went to the Braves facility in Venice, and it's brand new. And it was incredible. We had a ball. Didn't get to see the Sox that year, but down in Fort Myers, but also a great park. You know, I don't take any credence. It's such a long season. You just can't take credence in even a short season like NFL. You really can't. If they're doing it right, they're not trying to win the preseason in the NFL either. And, you know, they got 10 times as many games in the MLB. So I don't think about it a lot, but I do agree that one of the cool things about the Red Sox and something that might be a shift in the mindset of the Boston fan is, you know, if the Red Sox end up being the team that incubates the next Mookies and the next whatevers, and it's a lot of fun and they're competitive every year. That ain't so bad, right? I mean, you could have the flip side and have, you know, the California Angels, right? Where you have a couple massive stars and they can't win. I mean, if you can hunt every year and develop the next big thing, that'd be great. I mean, as much as I scream and yell about, you know, some of the things we haven't acquired in free agency, you know, you do have to look at, you know, me heading to Worcester multiple times per year to watch the next guys has been a blast. I didn't have them last year, but the last 3 seasons before that, I had seasons to the Worcester Red Sox and got to see, you know, the guys who are playing right now on the team, right? I got to see Jacob play. I got to see, got to see the catcher guy play, Connor Long. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But I will say in my house right now, spring break just started for my son. He's home and he has turned off spring training and he's all about the WBC right now. And in our house, we are cheering for the Dominican Republic. That's what we're doing. Even though we're not we have friends from down there. We have a lot of our favorite players are from the Dominican. So, you know, and Boston has a great history with the Dominican. So we are all in on the DR for the World Baseball Classic this year. So we'll see. We'll see how that's going when we next time we meet, right, in 2 weeks.
Yes, good choice. Very good choice. Very good. I think Boston fans are horribly spoiled, and I throw myself in there, and we weren't up until 2004, actually 2002, I guess, when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, or 2001 season in 2002. we've been spoiled ever since. And we have a generation that doesn't know what it's like to live through the 70s and the 80s and 90s as a Red Sox fan, Patriots fan, even Bruins fan, 80s and 90s, or Celtics.
You left the big one out, man. The Celtics are on fire this
Oh,
year.
I know. Without Tatum. Oh my gosh, man. Holy hell. Can you believe that?
And I will say that my favorite thing in all of Boston sports is anytime Joe Mazzulla takes the microphone. Literally my favorite coach interview of all time.
What is it that he watched every day? Was it the town or the party?
Yeah. He's fantastic. So, yeah.
Anyway, hey, what do you got going on coming up for travel?
I am jumping on a plane next week for the West Coast to go to Synopsys, actually, to check out what they've done. I will say I got a preview, and I think people are going to look at chip design a little differently after next week. I mean, there's, they just acquired Ansys,
yep.
And now they have kind of a much more streamlined process. So I'm excited to learn more a little bit about that. And also they're using AI to design chips, which is actually not terrifying. So that's good because, I don't want to see a Terminator thing happen. But no, but all kidding aside, Synopsys, I'm excited to get down there. And the shows are, as you know, Matt, the shows are piling up. We're going to be busy right up until the 4th of July, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I'm heading up your way to go to a Dell storage event next week. And I think you're right. I think starting next week until around July 4th, it's every week on the road. And then even July starting to book up now too. It's nonstop. It's going to be fun. Going to be lots to talk about, lots to write about. And poor folks in IT, man, it's like drinking from a fire hose now. It's hard to keep up with all the new stuff that's going on. But
we'll try to demystify it though. So
we'll try. All right. Hey, listen, safe travels. And for everybody out there watching, listening, thanks for tuning in. I hope you're not turned off by our bragging about how great our Boston sports teams are. If you are, too bad. But just want to end on this note. Don't take anything we say as financial advice. I know that sounds stupid, but we're required to do that. But thank you for tuning in, and can't wait for the next one in a couple of weeks. And until then.